I'm glad to have you join us again on the program from the National Assembly. I am Ignatius Nkwo. Well, on Thursdays, usually we bring to you live broadcasts of the plenary of the House of Representatives. But as it is today, members are not sitting, and therefore we'll bring to you some packages on the legislature. Prominent among them is a package on the various stages that a bill passes through before it becomes law. Well, when a bill is introduced on the floor of the parliament, it passes through a lot of legislative fireworks before it's considered and then passed into a law. Well, as a matter of fact, when bills are passed into law, it becomes an integral part of the society. And because of that, we try to ensure that the populace are aware of the processes that the legislators, well, passes this bill through before it becomes a law. The legislature, because of its representative nature, remains a significant symbol of democracy. It is the organ of government that churns out laws for the society. Law in the making is known as a bill. A bill passes through first, second, and third reading before it becomes law. The first journey of a bill in Parliament is its introduction to members, which is usually done through parliamentary journal. The production of this journal is a very significant process of bill process in Parliament.
So, Parliament has its own processes, procedures, and rules and regulations, and you have to follow it. Otherwise, somebody could go and challenge you and get the court to nullify the process. So we have procedure. Before you introduce a bill into Parliament, you have to draft the bill or get somebody to draft it for you, and take it to the Speaker. Write an application or motion to the Speaker that you want this bill introduced. Now, the Speaker will sign it and sign it to Office of Business and Rules to process it. Now, that's my duty as Chairman of Rules and Business Committee. Now, I'll send it over to the room that gazettes bills. A bill has to be gazetted before it can be worked upon. Now, after gazetting, it comes back to the Office of Rules and Business, and the process of lawmaking on the floor starts. That is when it comes up for first reading. Well, first reading is simply that the Speaker will call upon the clerk of the House to read the short title of the bill. Once the short title of the bill is read, it's taken as having been read for the first time. You know, and because there are so many of such bills, it's incumbent on Rules and Business to schedule when bills will come on the floor again. So depending on the convenience and depending on when it came up, you know, when it was first read on the floor. So Business and Rules Committee will set the bill that was read for the first time for second reading. Tertiary Education Trust Fund Establishment Act Amendment Bill 2017, first reading. Maritime Security Agency Establishment Bill 2017, first reading. Companies and Allied Matters Act Amendment Bill 2017, first reading. National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion Act Amendment Bill 2017, first reading. National Youth Service Corps Act Amendment Bill 2017, first reading. Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 Alteration Bill 2017, first reading. Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport Establishment Bill 2017, first reading. FCT Metropolitan Management Council Establishment Bill 2017, first reading. FCT Area Council Service Commission Establishment Bill 2017, first reading. Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 Alteration Bill 2017, first reading.
The next stage is the second reading. It is at this stage that members of Parliament debate the bill. It is also at this stage that the bill either progresses or it is thrown away and ceases to progress. If it passes this stage, it is then referred to a relevant committee.
Professionalism in the study and practice of facilities management, as well as registration, regulation, to set standards, to inspect facilities, discipline of the members, to regulate and control the practice of facilities, professions, and for other related matters. Second reading.
Bill is referred to Committee on Commerce.
Second reading simply means that the long title of the bill will be read. But before the long title of the bill is read, you have to apply that the bill be read a second time. If the majority of the members affirm that the bill should be read a second time, and then it then comes up for debate, the merits and demerits of that particular bill will be debated by members. After the debate, the question will be put whether the bill should now be read the second time. If it's affirmed to by a majority of the members, the clerk is then asked by the speaker to read the long title of the bill. This time, long title. The other one was short title. The long title of the bill will be read, and the bill is then referred to a standing committee of the House. Normally, it's a committee that has relevance. That bears whose jurisdiction bears on the subject matter of that particular bill. So, but the rules, the standing rules of the House of Representatives also gives room for referring it straight to committee of the whole. Committee of the whole is when the whole House is sitting in a committee, in which case the deputy, our rules allow the deputy speaker to step down. The deputy speaker, not the speaker this time, to step up to the lower seat and man the chairmanship of the committee of the whole. So it's normally, apart from money bills, appropriation bill, it is the deputy speaker that presides over committees of the whole. So he will preside it. That is if the bill is referred to the committee of the whole. But in the normal cases, that is normally referred to a standing committee of the House. Now, in the standing committee of the House, they will take a look at that bill and see whether there could be any amendment, see whether they could rejig it, and even invite the public in what is known as public hearing. The public, members of the public, the interest group, stakeholders will come and bring memoranda and even appear physically and put forth their position on what they think or the form in which they think the bill should take. Now, at the end of the public hearing, the report will be brought back and presented before the House. When it is presented and accepted, a date will be set for committee of the whole again. Because either it was sent, if you recall, I said it could either be sent to standing committee or committee of the whole. But even if it's sent to standing committee, it still comes back to committee of the whole, where the whole House sits in committee. And the clauses that were recommended are then taken on another date for what is called third reading.
Normally, when a bill is being referred to, normally the bill is being referred to committee at second reading, after second reading, depending on the acceptability of the bill during the plenary. And members are expected, of that committee, are expected to really study the bill, considering the kind of contributions given in support or against the bill during the plenary. And those views are incorporated into the whole bill. Because at that stage of committee level, we look at the bill clause by clause, one clause after the other. What were the contribution of members during plenary in respect of this clause? If there is a negative aspect of it, we point it out. If members are in support of it, we leave it. Or if there's anything new that is being added, we now add it to the clause. Then after the committee's sittings, sometimes the bills are being, the committees are being asked to jointly look at it with public hearing. Now, even during the public hearing, you still expect inputs from the public. And there are certain times when inputs comes in, inputs that were not even envisaged or that were not even contributed on the floor, but key stakeholders in that aspects of the law comes out with that suggestion. And when we now look at it and see that it is fantastic, we include it as a clause into the bill. Or when they go against certain clause in our bill, which we do not notice during the plenary or even at the committee level, we expunge it and then put it into the bill. So at the end of it all, what we are expecting is a whole comprehensive and acceptable bill. then before we now return to the House for third reading.
Okay, would there be a situation where sometimes a bill can might spend so long a time in the committee stage, more than necessary? What could lead to that, and what would be the solution?
Sincerely, it all depends on the activeness of the committees. And although, like I can be able to cite an example, that is a bill we are looking at what we call a Satellite Town Development Agency bill at the Committee on FCT. Well, beside all the contributions given by members on the floor of the House, when we called for public hearing, the whole bill was trashed. So it then means it has to revert back again. So the whole delay is not at the committee level. Whatever the level of observation that we are able to get is what we are going to use. If we have a minor corrections, we do the corrections. That is in case of addition or subtractions. But it is much, then the bill has to return back.
So usually, who are invited for public hearing in Parliament?
Well, we concentrate on these major stakeholders, like in the case of the bill that I have just cited an examples. We have professional institutes that are directly related to the activities of that particular agency that wanted to be that we want to establish. So these are the people we call upon, people that have the knowledge, or people that the activities of this particular agency will have an impact on. Let them come and tell us their view. We now read the bill clause by clause so that they can be able to understand what each clause means and the impact of the clause on them, whether positive or negatively.
Okay, but in some cases, is it possible that when you invite a stakeholder and he comes and he has interest in a particular thing,
yep,
which might not be in favor of Nigerians, and then he wants to get the Parliament to infuse that particular recommendation of force into the bill? In such cases, can it happen?
Of course it does. Of course it does. Law is all about interest. Even in the House, we go with the majority. When you talk about when you bring each of these clauses, it depends on the level of acceptance among the members. The majority carries the votes. So if what you are introducing does not favor the majority, then it's going to be thrown away. But once it's generally accepted by the majority, it will be accepted.
All right, finally, how will it differentiate between budget defense and public hearing of bills?
Well, budget defense is like another form of a public hearing, but this time around you are dealing principally with the MDA concern, whether the ministry, departments, or the agency concerns. Now you brought your budget to us, and we begin to ask you, why did you allocate this amount of money to this particular project? Why do you deprive this particular project? So we want to know your priorities vis-a-vis the allocations you made to each. So you tell us, depend it. If you cannot depend it, why not? We remove it, because we have the power to appropriate. If what you appropriate does not go so well with the interests of the Nigerian masses, we remove it. And then add it to where we feel it will make an impact both socially and economically to the Nigerian people. So that is budget defense. Public hearing, we are asking the view of the public in respect of a particular bill or a particular clause inside the bills. So that what do you think if government decide to do so things for you? Yes, it's a welcome development, it's an excellent thing. We pass that clause. Once you tell us that this thing that government wants to do after the enactment of this law has a serious negative impact on the livelihood of Nigerian citizens, we now ask you to tell us reasons. Once you are able to convince us beyond reasonable doubt, everyone there will be convinced that, yes, truly this thing has negative impact, and we expunge it. Because our concern is the security, welfare of the Nigerian people. So anything contrary to that, we do away with it. So that is public hearing. Let's have the public view. Though we are their representatives, we are learned, we know exactly what they want, but let's give them a chance to equally make an input. And their input, I must confess, is seriously making difference.
When the bill is undergoing that second reading, that is where they are expected to comment on that bill. They must have digested it. They must have understood the spirit and the letter of that law, that proposed law, because it's still not a law. Now, it is also in that second reading that the legislator who introduced that bill will lead them in the process of the second reading. He will now tell them the purpose, the intent, the advantages, the pros, and the cons. You know, whether it's a new law that is being proposed or it is an old law that is being proposed to be amended. So all this will come from the legislator who introduced or who the mantle has fallen on him to introduce this bill and also lead the debate that will ensue from after the first reading and after they have digested it. So it's now ready for comments. Now they will take on those comments after the second reading. And supposing it is a bill that will need some professional input or that will need some more brushing, it now gets to the fourth stage, which is that of the committee stage. If that bill touches on two committees, now the two committees will now set up a joint committee to study that bill. And the essence of that committee stage is for experts in that field that this law is being proposed to comment, to digest, to examine it carefully from that professional point of view and look at what it is that this law will add to the existing situation in the country. Is it an entirely new law that is coming in, or is it a proposed amendment that is being introduced to that very bill? So they will examine the pros and the cons and see whether when they report back to the House, they would have anything to add or to subtract from this bill, having gotten to that stage. Then sometimes this very stage too, there could be a stage number 5, which you may describe as public hearing. Aside from the experts within the National Assembly who must have looked at that bill and examined and x-rayed the bill after the second reading, they would now subject it, if need be, to a public hearing. And the essence of the public hearing is to let the members of the public come in and also say what they feel like about that bill. Because at times, there's nobody that has any monopoly of knowledge. And particularly, there may be some bills that will touch on some associations, i.e. labor matters, or it could be children's rights, it could be something, women's rights, etc., petroleum, name it, agriculture. So you don't just rely on the agriculturists, you don't only rely on the women, you don't only rely on the lawyers, you don't only rely on those who are experts in agriculture within the House. You now want to bring in the larger public. Let them come and also regurgitate and add more value, to this bill. So that when this law comes in, and because it's to be implemented, it's not going to be implemented only on the floor of the House. It's going to be a law that will be executed and implemented in the public, in the society. So allow members of the society, others who might have more knowledge, who may be more knowledgeable than you, experts. You may invite experts, you may invite practitioners, stakeholders to come and comment in that public hearing. So you now understand that this bill is now going through the mills. Now, after all this is said and done, they will come back to what we call the committee of the whole and now consider the outcome of both the committee stage as well as the public hearing.
From the committee stage to the report stage, where the committee submits its report at plenary and considered at the Committee of the Whole for General Bills and Committee of Supply for Money Bills. As soon as members approve the report of the committee, the bill is read and passed at third reading and awaits concurrence in the case of bicameral legislature. Concurrence by the two chambers does not make the bill a law. It has to be assented to by the president, but where the president withholds his assent without any explanation after 30 days, the legislators can now override his veto through a two-thirds majority.
And it now gets to the third reading, which is that traditional first, second, third reading. So it is at that third reading that you will now know that this bill has some sense, has some value to add. Otherwise, it would have been knocked off since after the first reading. So for it to get to this very state, at the third reading, usually no major corrections are taken, no major amendments takes place there. It will either be crossing the T's, dotting the I's, correcting names, spellings, and all those minor corrections. So after this third reading, it now goes into the clean copy stage, which is, you may call this stage 6. The clean copy will now follow those corrections that must have been taken at the third reading. The clean copy is being endorsed by the clerk, signed, by the clerk of the House, particularly if you are talking of a bicameral legislature like we have. It will be the clerk of the Senate that will have the clean copy signed by him and endorsed by the Senate President. That's on the Senate wing. On the House of Representatives wing, ditto, the same. A bill that has undergone third reading, particularly also been introduced from the House, and the various corrections effected. It goes into that clean copy stage, which will be signed by the clerk to the House of Representatives and endorsed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. But there is a rider here too before it finally goes for assent, which is the last stage, which is when that bill eventually becomes law after the bill has been assented to by the president, namely the president's signature or the governor's signature, as the case may be, if it is in the State House of Assembly. But where it's a bicameral legislature, there's something I need to add here before we finally conclude. If a bill was introduced from, let's say, the Senate, and it goes through all these stages simultaneously with the House of Representatives, Senate will send that clean copy to the House of Reps for them to see whether there are areas of divergence, whether there are areas where they differ. And if any, they now bring such areas of difference or divergence back to the Senate at a committee of a whole, where they don't agree with the corrections or the additions or the subtractions from the House of Reps, there will be a need for a conference committee to be set up, where they will look at these areas of divergence and come to a common conclusion. And it is only after that is done that the full and final clean copy is now sent for assent to the president. And such a letter will be signed by the clerk to the National Assembly. No longer the clerk of the two houses, but after the conference, the final clean copy that will go to the president will now be signed by the clerk of the National Assembly and endorsed by the Senate President and the Speaker. Then it now goes to the President for his assent. If the President doesn't have any qualms, doesn't have any queries, doesn't have any observations, any comments, any reservations, he will assent to it. And from the day of that assent, that bill no longer takes the nomenclature a bill, but it becomes a law. But where, again, the President does not assent, the Constitution gives him 30 days within which to assent to the bill, or otherwise. So if he doesn't assent to it, within these 30 days to come back to the National Assembly with comments, with reasons why he cannot, or he or she cannot assent to that bill. Now, it behoves the National Assembly to also take a look at this reasoning that came back from the presidency without assent to the bill. If they agree with him, that marks the end, of that bill. But where they don't agree with him and they feel strongly that this bill ought to become law, then they will now invoke the provisions of the Constitution using their 2/3 majority of the House, of the two sitting together, to override this executive veto of the president, and that bill eventually becomes law. These are the various stages. So there are 7 good stages, inclusive of the traditional first, second, and third reading that takes place.
But the essence of bills, proposed bills and amendments of bills is essentially to cure mischief in an existing law or bill, or propose new laws into an existing bill that is obviously obsolete, because obviously our laws needs to be reviewed over time, because some of these laws have been made quite some time ago. For example, if as at 10 years ago you charge somebody 10 naira for fine, 10 naira today is obviously worth nothing. So such laws needs to be reviewed or repealed or reenacted. So that is the entire process of bill passaging and bill amendments. The 8th Assembly has been one of the most vibrant house in terms of bill passages and bill amendments. You can see that Speaker Dogara has zero tolerance for any other issue other than passages of bills and amendments of bills. That's just to tell you that he is desirous of making an impact, in dealing with the issues of obsolete laws in our system, and also encouraging members to do more of implementation of new bills, suggestions, amendments, and repealing of obsolete bills.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it.
The functions of legislators as representatives of the people and oversight over the other arms of government is as important as that of lawmaking. Well, next on our package is a package on the effectiveness of audit of annual budgets. Well, the legislature, one of its significant functions is to ensure that the annual budget of a nation or a country is effectively audited, to ensure that there is value for the money that have been appropriated by the executive. But well, in the legislature, National Assembly to be precise, it is the Public Accounts Committee that scrutinizes the budget that has been passed by the National Assembly, and it is the Public Accounts Committee that audits the accounts and budgets of ministries, departments, and agencies. Audit is a very crucial stage in budgeting. The importance of this process towards ensuring transparency and accountability in the implementation of annual budget is aptly captured in the provision of Section 85, subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, which provides that the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation shall audit accounts of all federal government agencies annually. Several agencies have been discovered to be flouting this constitutional provision by the National Assembly Committees on Public Accounts, a situation the committees described as unacceptable and a major obstacle in Nigeria's budget process.
How can you be doing business, collecting money? There's no audited report. From inception, that's the worst. From the time some of the agencies were established, they have not brought the audited report.
Like the Chairman Senate rightly said, we have a lot of agencies, over 300, that are yet to submit their reactions to Auditor General's queries for the years ending between 2010 to 2014.
But for those parastatals that are up to date, which are 21 in number, like the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Federal Medical Center Birnin Kebbi, and the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, the committees commended them.
To those who have submitted, yes, I will commend them for submitting. Those who have also appeared to defend their submissions, I will commend them, because we're talking about transparency. We're also talking about judicious use of public fund.
A public finance analyst and lecturer with the National Institute for Legislative Studies postgraduate program, Dr. Asimiu Abiola, profiles some solution to this teething problem.
When the National Assembly appropriates fund to the executive, the normal procedure, financial procedures at the end of that financial year, the account of the government ministries, department agencies should be audited and a report laid before the legislature for scrutiny to ensure that the appropriated funds have been spent as approved.
All right, if I would say, does the Nigerian statute books capture the importance of this program? If it does, which of the constitutions can we found it?
It is provided in the 1999 Constitution as amended. Specifically, Section 85 of the Constitution as amended.
Okay, then we have the issue of, most times we hear the issue right now, in fact, there's a release from the National Assembly that some parastatals have not submitted their report in the last 2, 3, 4 years. What is your take and what do you think are the cause for this?
The 1999 Constitution as amended provides that the accounts of all ministries, departments, and agencies should be audited annually. The audit procedure is divided into two. For the ministries, the Auditor General of the Federation audits the accounts of the ministries directly, and include this one is a report to the National Assembly. In the case of the parastatals, that is departments and agencies, the Auditor General does not have the power to audit them directly. However, Section 85(3) of the National Constitution as amended provides that he can provide a list of suitably qualified auditors, as well as the fees payable to these auditors and the guidelines for these auditors to carry out their duties. And that at the end of the day, the report of such audit should be sent to him through the parastatal for him to make comments and then send him to the National Assembly for scrutiny. It has been observed that some of these department agencies have 2, 3, 4, 5, even 7 years arrears of reports. In fact, there are some of them that have never had their audits audited, their accounts audited since they are established.
Right, so then as a public finance analyst, can you tell us what you think are the recommendations from you that would bring succor to this development?
Okay, probably before the recommendations, we need to take a look at the implications of late submission. Yes. Now, as I said earlier, the parastatal should have their account audited and submitted to the Auditor General of the Federation, who will make professional comments on the report and then send him to the National Assembly. So if they don't submit to him on time, he has nothing to make comments upon. The National Assembly has nothing to work upon. And then transparency and accountability suffer. And because corruption thrives in darkness, a lot of things are going on in many of these parastatals because their accounts are not audited. There's another problem. Because the parastatals appoint their own auditors, the quality of the report is also not very good because for any meticulous auditor, may have his job terminated. His contract will not be renewed at the next year. If he's too meticulous, he wants to show that he can do work and so on. So I know no auditor would like to lose his or her job. So they just like to play the game as demanded by the parastatal. In this case, there's compromise, such that substantial information is not captured in their report. And this will affect what the report will be used for. So in other words, the usefulness of the report is impaired once vital information are not there. And because the Auditor General cannot do this thing directly, neither the public accountant will use it eventually. So they only use what is available. And that what is available is limited because of compromise. Now, to your question of recommendation. In the 1979 Constitution, there was a provision there that says the Auditor General of the Federation should appoint the external auditors for these parastatals. This will make the auditors responsible to the Auditor General because he's going to supervise them. If he does that, he can then have control on the timeliness of the report as well as the quality. Secondly, the Auditor General also carry out periodic checks on the parastatals. But that is not enough because that is not a full audit. But now, given this policy of whistleblowing, it may guide the periodic check such that before much damage is done to go to public fund, certain remedies can be, damage control can be initiated. However, in some other democracies, the way we do things in Nigeria is different from what happens in other democracies. The Auditor General in other democracies like in the US, UK, and some other places is an officer of the legislature. He works for the legislature. But in Nigeria, the Auditor General works with the legislature. Section 86 of the 1999 Constitution as amended provides that he shall be appointed by the President on the advice of the Federal Civil Service Commission. By implication, he's a civil servant, and he owes his allegiance to the person appointing him. So it doesn't make any economic sense for the National Assembly to appropriate fund, and that fund to be audited by somebody appointed by the person who is spending the money. So I know that it may be very difficult for the executive to relinquish that power, but it is the best for our country to have the Auditor General work for the legislature rather than with the legislature as it is currently the situation. Both the executive and the legislature, they are working for the Nigerian citizens, for the Nigerian, for the country. The thing should be done the way it will be in the best interest of the country. I mean, if we have seen that in other countries, the Auditor General reports directly as an officer to the legislature and is effective, they have been able to reduce corruption. Why don't we change it? If that is what is going to help us, especially given that the current regime in Nigeria is seriously working to reduce corruption. So if that is one of the things that will help us, why not do it? Agencies, they will raise money and spend it. And the law, existing law is saying that they should only remit the operating surplus. And you know, people will say, okay, you spend and then send what is left. Most of the time, it may not work out because people will always have something to spend on. And that is why the country does not have savings. The normal theory of saving is that you, from your income, you save and spend the rest. But in Nigeria, we spend and save the rest. Even for individuals, actually it is difficult for many people to save because the ideal thing is to get your income, first of all save, and then spend the rest. But for many people, when we get our income, we spend and try to save what is left. And at the end of the day, nothing is left. And that's why we have a poor savings culture. Unlike other countries, people have to be disciplined. They say, look, this is my income. Once I get it, I save. Then spend the rest. But if you always want to work the other way around, you have nothing to save. So that is a problem, even for our government. The whole problem, the whole crude oil price that has been falling, is not peculiar to Nigeria, but other countries have been able to save. Now that these challenges are there now, they are now withdrawn from their past savings and then be able to cover to cushion the effect. But in Nigeria, we don't have that savings culture. Savings is a culture, and a government should, in line with its ongoing campaign of reorientating Nigeria, the savings culture should be revisited. I could remember in the Southwest, where I was born and brought up, when we were very young, our parents used to give us these boxes, seed up. Yes, when visitors come and they give you 1 naira or 50 kobo, you drop it inside that box. During Salah, you now open the box and you find a lot of money. So from childhood, we are trained to save. But now, give money to any young child now, you discover that the first thing he's thinking is on how will I spend this money. So we need to revisit that savings culture. So once you have the culture as individual, it will help the government to also save.
And finally, on this week's edition of the program from the National Assembly, I will bring to you a public hearing on an investigation by the House Ad Hoc Committee on the mounting of telecommunication mast. Well, the House of Representatives is trying to find out if there are health hazards of mounting telecommunication masts in residential areas. The public hearing is in response to a motion moved on the floor by Representative Anayo Nnebe, urging the House to intervene in what he described as health hazards of mounting masts in residential areas.
It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this investigative hearing organized by the Ad Hoc Committee to investigate the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings. This is in pursuant to the resolution of the House on Tuesday, 17 January 2017, on the motion calling for assessment of the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings, which mandated the setting up of an ad hoc committee to undertake a thorough investigation of the motion so as to gather the opinion of the stakeholders and the general public for further legislative action. As noted at similar occasions in the recent past, investigative hearing is a governance window by the legislature in the promotion of citizens' participation in the lawmaking process and by implication in governance. Accordingly, I wish to encourage all the stakeholders here seated to participate zealously by offering their views and opinions without bias or hindrance, in the confidence that we are contributing towards the enactment of quality legislation that we all desire in our country. We must note that the safety of Nigerians should rate high on the priorities of our actions, as this is our primary constitutional responsibility. The House of Representatives and indeed the National Assembly will not allow the indiscriminate siting of telecommunication masts and base stations, as well as any other facilities where such is proven to be illegal and injurious to public health through emission of dangerous electromagnetic radiation fumes or noise pollution close to buildings and the ecosystem. For the avoidance of doubt, we are not debunking the fact that, as a developing country, we desire to get the best from all developmental infrastructure as a quest for better service delivery and industrialization. Nonetheless, our economic development and the protection of our environment must not be antagonistic of each other, but should rather be symbiotic. Finally, I wish to reiterate that the House places a lot of confidence in the ability of members of this ad hoc committee to rise to the occasion and deliver on this very important national assignment in the shortest possible time. May I therefore formally declare open the investigative hearing on the ad hoc committee to investigate the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings, and wish you all fruitful deliberations. God bless you all, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I am delighted, highly delighted to address you on the special occasion of the investigative hearing on the health implications of the mounting of telecommunications masts close to buildings by this ad hoc committee constituted specially to assess the matter. May I, on behalf of this committee, use this medium to thank Mr. Speaker, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, and the entire leadership of the House of Representatives for giving us this opportunity to serve the House in particular and Nigeria in general. We pledge to discharge our duties diligently without fear or favor. Let me use this occasion to state emphatically that this hearing is not an avenue to be conservative with the truth to the detriment of our people, the environment, and the economic development of our country. It is a hearing to gather all the necessary scientific evidence and decisions from local and international bodies, researchers, and experts to assist the House of Representatives in arriving at the best legislative decisions. However, no view will be regarded as not important. Therefore, be open and be sincere in your contributions. It is worthy to note that this committee has taken into cognizance that there are conflicting findings in studies conducted to determine whether or not electromagnetic radiation, EMR, emitted by telecommunication masts and its associated equipments are injurious to human health and environment. We are also aware of the recent confusion between National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESRA, and the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, on this matter, especially on the setback distance which telecommunications operators have to adapt in siting their masts close to buildings. P.I. Ejina and G.O. Angwere, in characterization of the radio frequency radiation potential of Alakia and Choba communities, Nigeria 2010, in their study, linked the cases of fatigue, headache, sleep disturbance, and loss of memory to the effect of electromagnetic radiation, EMR, on people living close to masts. On the other hand, Nigerian Communication Weekly Journal of 14th July 2008 stated that, and I quote, at the Nigerian Communication Commission's NCC monthly telecoms consumer parliament held in Maiduguri on 2nd May 2006, Dr. Bashir Wandu, Executive Commissioner, Licensing and Consumer Affairs, NCC, who represented Engineer Enes Ndukwe, Executive Vice Chairman of the Commission, in response to an inquiry by a learned professor of the University of Maiduguri, made a clarification, amongst others, to the effect that there is no conclusive scientific evidence at present to indicate that radiation from telecommunication masts or handsets could cause such dangerous diseases as cancer among humans, unquote. Also, Shalangwa DA, Vasira BG, and Waba SAS in 2011 on health risk of using global system for mobile communication, GSM, mobile phone. In their conclusions recommended as follows, and I quote, despite the fact that this study shows that it is safe to use mobile phone as additional margin of safety, the following recommendations can be put in place to avoid excessive exposure. Number one, when going to bed, switch off your mobile phone or keep it far away from you. Number two, avoid frequent contacts/calls or use microphones instead of placing mobile phones close to your ear. Number three, pregnant women should keep their mobile phones away from them. Number four, send your messages through text instead of regular calls, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, can you see the dilemma? If I may ask, is electromagnetic radiation the only effect on human and environment as a result of telecommunications operations? Definitely the answer is no. Therefore, in the course of these investigations, stakeholders, operators, professional bodies, experts, researchers, government and non-governmental agencies, and the regulatory bodies are required to consider other aspects to ascertain their possible effects on the populace. For example, environmental, accidental, aviation, vibrations, etc., etc., either short-term or long-term, associated with installations of telecommunication masts and its associated equipment close to buildings. Finally, I wish to assure all the participants once again that your views and opinions will count in evolving the legislative framework and implementation strategies for ensuring a minimum health and environmental risk with reference, but not limited to specific absorption rates, SAR, noise pollution, air pollution, heats, smoke, and vibrations as a result of indiscriminate installations of telecommunication masts and base stations close to buildings in the country. Therefore, I welcome you to this public hearing and urge you to feel free to make your contributions fully and faithfully towards this cause, to enhance our healthy living in a conducive environment for technological development of our great nation. Thank you and God bless you. Long live the House of Representatives, long live the National Assembly, and long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The Director of Technical Standards and Network Integrity of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Fidelis Honor, presented a contrary view.
It is understandable when people show concerns about health implications around masts, towers. Globally, different people and groups have expressed concerns about the impact of the radiation from the wireless systems on health and the environment. To address these concerns, different study and research projects by individual countries, institutions, and multi-countries jointly working together have been going on over years. In our proactive regulatory notion, we have decided to license co-locators, that is infrastructure co-locators. These are operators that co-locate all the base stations, so you will not be having individual operators rolling out base stations. This is just to eliminate the proliferation of base stations. Our reasons for infrastructure sharing are numerous, which include efficient use of resources, environmental friendliness, cost reduction, reduction in proliferation of masts and towers to facilitate penetration and coverage. It is noteworthy that not all the masts or towers belong to telecommunications industry. It is pertinent to draw the attention of this committee to the issue of some conflicting factors in rolling out telecommunication services. In order to succeed in pervasive penetration and coverage of the telecommunication services, trade-offs need to be reached amongst the conflicting factors like electromagnetic wave propagation versus vegetation, mass installation civil works versus ecosystem, coverage, quality of service, pervasive rollout versus right of way, etc. If these factors are not adequately addressed, without telecommunication services, the respective communities may be denied the benefits from the United Nations Millennium Development Goals initiative. The radiation of radio waves in the frequency band under consideration is within the UHF, and it is non-ionizing radiation with no residue as to depositing radiation particles after contact. Interphone study is one of the joint efforts by countries that was on for over 15 years. Interphone was initiated as an international set of case-controlled studies focusing on 4 types of tumors in tissue that most absorb radio frequency energy emitted by mobile phones: tumors of the brain, parotid gland, and acoustic nerve. The objective was to determine whether mobile phones increase the risk of these tumors, and specifically whether radio frequency energy emitted by mobile phones and base stations increase the tumor. The study was concluded in 2012. The report did not find any adverse effect on human. However, it is advised that due to the limitations of the study and the incompleteness of human knowledge, further studies are encouraged, and it is advisable that contact with the headsets should be reduced rather than the headphones. It should be the headphones. Incidentally, people are more worried about base stations, but the phones you are having are also a little concerned. The base stations that we are talking about emit just about 20 watts of energy, of power, as against several thousands of watts of power as radiated by radio and television masts. This power and the propagation is inversely proportional to the distance, and that is square of the distance measured in meters. So it means that if you go like 10 meters, it will have reduced by 100-fold. Telecom masts are very necessary because we will need to have coverage of designated areas. There is also the report of World Health Organization. In their conclusion, it says, considering the very low exposure levels and research results collected to date, there is no convincing scientific evidence that the weak RF signal from base stations and wireless networks can have adverse health effects. Studies to date provide no indication that environmental exposure to radio frequency fields, such as from base stations, increases the risk of cancer or any other disease. This, incidentally, is also published in their website, which is accessible to everybody. The Nigerian Communications Commission has MOU with Federal Ministry of Environment and NESRIA, the National Environmental Standards Regulations and Enforcement Agency. And we all know where we do things, I mean, where our own mandates stop. And we have been jointly.
Please, can you summarize your submission?
Okay. Well, the report we have from WHO as well as Interphone and other results do not have not indicated any adverse effects.
It's unfortunate that Nigerians could go to any extent for selfish ends, in spite of the effect it will have on their fellow countrymen. My NCC man, I have a simple question for you. Is there any setback, minimal setback of mask to residential or office buildings? Is there any standard, minimal setback?
When we met with NESRIA, we agreed on 10 meters.
Okay, sorry. Originally it was agreed 5 meters with whom? What was the basis of the agreement? And what is the basis for the change of that agreement? What was the basis for the initial 5 meters? And what necessitates the change to a new minimum distance? Okay. And why can't you go further? 2-3 questions on that. Yes, briefly, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members, the initial guidelines of NCC is 5 meters. And let me just clarify something. The distance of the mass from demise has nothing to do with radiation. It's not in relation to radiation. But should there be a collapse? That was the basis. And from all happenings that we know about collapse of mass, they hardly collapse from the root. It's not that it can never happen, but they normally tilt and break in this form. So the 5 meters, 10 meters has nothing to do with radiation. It is because of the physical structure just near the demise of any building. When NCC came up with that, then later Nigeria Act was passed by this honorable, by the National Assembly. In their own, they came up with 10 meters. That question has arisen. Why is the 10 meters? Then,
you asked them why
after that, we've all agreed that, okay, going forward, from the time we had that meeting and agreement, let operators comply with the 10 meters, because the law said this act of the act of Nigeria supersede any other existing. as normally the practice of this National Assembly. Once a law is passed, they say it supersedes any other, substituting law, law legislation. On the basis of that, it was agreed that operators from that point should henceforth adhere to the 10 meters, setback. But as I say, has nothing to do with radiation. As an engineer, I can tell you, has nothing to do with radiation.
Okay. Some communities are in some houses, people are mounting masts right at the center of the building. Where people live, there's mast mounted in most of those buildings. Then secondly, to what extent have you people disputed this idea of what happened in Choba and Alekaya community, that as a result of this radiation, that it characterized most of those things like fatigue, headache, and all these issues? Have you disputed what they have said in Alekaya?
First of all, we've all been traveling all over the world. If you go fly into any of the developed countries, you find out that you won't see any mast. But where are the antennas? The antennas are on rooftop, people's houses and offices. Here in Nigeria...
Please, 1 minute.
Yes.
Antennas are on rooftops.
Yes.
Rooftops are not closer to human beings. That's what you should know. Rooftops, if you take a distance of that antenna on the rooftop to human beings, is far beyond 10 meters. Bear that in mind. We've noted your discussion. Yes.
Okay, what I'm saying is, the setback has nothing to do with radiation. And we are talking about radiation, Mr. Chairman, here. As far as radiation is concerned, it is the same. The antennas are on rooftop, houses and offices where people live and work day and night. Here in Nigeria, the difference is this. We don't have enough tall buildings in our cities, and we don't have buildings that have the integrity to place the antenna. One. Secondly, we have the issue of power. All the base stations are powered by a generator. So when you put on somebody's roof, you need to put a generator to power it. You need to put a generator to power it. And that is why we have the mast became a necessity in our environment. The mast became a necessity because of peculiarity of our environment. But as far as cellular service is concerned all over the world, you need to have the antenna hang at a certain distance so that you have a coverage. And that coverage, that distance is given by the rooftop in areas where you have tall buildings that have the integrity to place the antenna. And people are right sleeping and walking under that roof. In most cases, those rooftops are not up to even 15 meters high.
Okay.
They are directly
Thank you. You've said
by
this
the side
all
of the
over.
building.
Yeah, you have said this all over.
My question is a very simple one. The NCC man said that they have 10 meters, that minimal setback. My question is this: have you been observing the 10 meters all around the country?
The Nigerian Medical Association, the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and some other environmental experts submitted that closeness of telecommunication masts to humans exposes them to some peculiar health hazards.
I'm here with a memorandum on the health implication of mounting telecommunication masts close to buildings. Mr. Chairman, telecommunications is the transmission of signs, signals, messages, writings, images, sound, media, such as cables or via electromagnetic radiation. Communications mast is a tall structure designed to support antenna with magnetic flux that are dangerous to human health and psychobiological reactions of the people who are living near mobile phone-based transceiver stations, BTS antenna, in Isfahan, Iran, was conducted in 2014, and the results showed that most of the symptoms, such as nausea, headache, dizziness, sleep disturbance, memory loss, of libido, were statistically significant in the inhabitants living near the base transceiver stations, antenna of 300 meters distance. Compared to those living far, results have shown that in its Donganon local government district, residents that are 1 to 5 kilometers from the mast have several number of cancer cases, including cancer of lungs, prostate, breast cancer, lung cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, and hematopoietic cancer. Respective regulatory bodies should continue to monitor the radiation levels emitted into the environment by the BTS of the telecommunications providers. The soil tests should be carried out to determine the soil condition and wind direction for the windbreakers before the proposed masts are installed, especially because of the incidences of collapse. The physical development control agencies in each Nigerian state, their Ministry of Physical Planning, their Urban and Regional Planning Board, staffed and equipped auction and illegal development so as to promote a virile urban and sustainable urban development. They should, as a matter of obligation, ensure preparation and effective implementation of physical development plans. Mr. Chairman and distinguished honorable members of the committee, I have with me also in the team representatives of the Nigerian Institution of the Biomedical Engineering Study Group, the Nigerian Institution of Safety Engineers, and the Nigerian Institution of Environmental Engineers, and the Communication Engineering Study Group. They are also going to make further explanations from their various perspectives. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Our President has spoken well, and I hereby, on our own side, we recommend that it is strongly advised that the base stations be located sufficiently far away from residential and commercial buildings. And there should be massive sensitization that the use of Wi-Fi devices, laptop computers, mobile phones be restricted from children under the age of 8. 2, further research should be carried out to determine the appropriate distance to the building for the establishment of base station and therefore pass into law. Lastly, it is also recommended that all installed masts should be maintained regularly by carrying out integrity tests, painting of towers, reconstruction of bent towers, and other maintenance works to ensure safety of our lives. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I will just go straight to the recommendation we have here. The researchers already, many of the researchers are unsure of specific long-term effects resulting from this prolonged exposure to the non-ionizing radiation. So on this note, we want to say that a research should be initiated locally to determine the appropriate distance suitable for the mounting of masts. 2, the telecom provider should assemble their BTA, as been said earlier, at approved location that is far away from the buildings. 3, government should make it by law that monitoring of radiation level within the environment should be carried out at regular interval. And lastly, sir, installation of masts within the hospital environment should be discouraged, if possible, as this affects the proper functioning of some medical equipment due to electromagnetic interference from telecommunication equipment. Interference with life supporting equipment has been established by some researchers that using electromagnetic radiation in the hospital is greatly affecting the medical equipment as it affects the diagnosis and the treatment of the patient.
Medical reports have shown that radiation from BTS are carcinogenic. They are capable of generating cancer cells in the human body, and this can result in children being deformed physically, and long-term exposure to this radiation from BTS can affect reproduction, as my president has stated in his remarks. Environmental effects, we have structural safety of towers. We can see towers collapsing, like an event we have in Abuja on a hotel building with the attendant casualties. Also, the second effect is noise nuisance, noise pollution. At night, when you're expected to sleep and have a quiet night rest, you see this kind of noise that come out from mass that is very, very irritable. And we have the environmental pollution. There are leakages from these generators that are powering this mast, and we don't know what the operators are doing to checkmate, because you have children, most times, or sometimes they do go around there to play. So their exposure to this oil, which do have atomic properties, is not really encouraging. We have the radiation control. This is a known fact that microwave transmission is through radiation of waves that are dangerous to human lives. No known control is instituted for masts once installed. These masts, especially the backbone sites, are loaded with antennae and microwaves of different sizes and radiation capacities. We have not only concentration of these microwaves and antenna, we have concentration of clusters of masts and towers of various heights and loads. Finally, we have the skyline disruption. Most metropolises like Lagos, Ibadan, Aba, Kaduna, Enugu have been messed up by various masts and towers. This is dangerous for low-flying helicopters, monitoring drones, distress aircrafts. The skyline architecture has been overtaken by the mast, which is not seen in civilized countries.
The environmental engineers, having studied the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings, hereby in line with the position of the Nigerian Society of Engineers as presented. We said further that the effects of electromagnetic radiation on human health are widely discussed both at the political and at the scientific level. Everyone knows the electromagnetic radiation can be dangerous. A variety of studies carried out has confirmed its harmful effects. For example, the results of the latest project of the World Health Organization confirms that the long use of mobile phones can cause cancer. The Environmental Division of the Nigerian Set of Engineers is hereby saying that the establishment of more telecommunication infrastructures, such as masts and base stations, has raised some environmental concerns, especially in the area of environmental impact assessment. It has become a part of the environment to sit on masts in different locations around the country. These masts, though helpful, are believed to have negative health effects on people living near where they are erected. We hereby say that telecommunication mast mounting close to buildings is dangerous to health of people living in the building due to the effect of electromagnetic radiations emitted in the process of its transmission, a position that has been affirmed by the position and the submission of our interparental body, the Nigerian Society of Engineers.
The Nigerian Medical Association is so delighted and feels honored by this invitation to present a position paper on this issue, because the health perspective, which has been generating a lot of controversy, is very germane. In the developed world, where the use of GSM has been in place years before us, a lot of concerns on various health hazards posed by electromagnetic radiations emitted from GSM devices has led to various studies. The initial fear was dismissed as a hoax after some studies. However, lately, a lot of attention is being drawn to the radiofrequency radiation emitted from the base transmitter station. More studies have now shown that exposure to GSM radiations are linked to health hazards, such as fatigue, headache, decreased concentration, local radiation, sperm motility, and other effects like brain tumor and leukemia. Many countries currently follow the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, a German independent body guidelines set for exposure to radiation and siting of EBTS. The advantage of a telecom tower is that a single installed unit can be home to multiple telecom providers. Some aspects of the important guidelines are noted. While we don't want to go into talking again about the guidelines for both international and Nigerian regulatory agencies, which has been elucidated earlier, what we want to address here, are there any proven health hazards associated with
radiofrequency radiations from base transmitter stations. In earlier response by the WHO in their international workshop on base station and wireless network, exposure and health concerns held in June 2005 in Geneva, the conclusion made overall was that no clear evidence of the numerous listed deleterious biological effects could be associated with RFR from base transmitter stations because exposure levels are very low. However, the WHO recognizes the effect of telecom mass stations on sleep, blood flow, cognitive functions, and general well-being. WHO also recognizes the research work linking higher incidence and mortality of leukemia among children living with living within BTS vicinity. This now made WHO to uphold the precautionary principle. We will explain this in the course of this presentation. So many other studies have gone on, both isolated and in conjunction with other institutions. One is by EGA in November 2004, which links increased incidence of cancer to base station transmitter radiations. Also, we have those that connected with melanoma and others. A home study in Nigeria by Aderoju Olaide said that base assessment of the compliance of GSM operation in establishing base transmitter station in Nigeria, a case study, concluded that out of the 126 BTS stations sampled in AMAC phase 1 and is failed the 10-meter and 12-meter buffer zone tests, and only 7 BTS met the NESTRIA standard at 10 meters. Clark also talked on the effect of radiation on estrogen and melatonin metabolites among women residing near radio and television radio broadcasting transmitters, concluded that radiofrequency and radiofrequency radiations and temporarily stable 60 Hz exposures were associated with increased excretion among postmenopausal women. That's increased excretion of metabolites. Now, there are other research projects that have been done on the long-term exposure to frequency modulation and cell transmitters, and all of them indicated that there are some deleterious effects. Now, what are the health consequences of proximity to frequency modulation station and cell transmitters? A German study found a 3-fold higher frequency of cancer among people living in the vicinity, that is within 400 meters of a GSM base station, compared to people living further away from the antenna. The risk for mammary cancer, that's breast cancer, was 3.4 times greater, and the average age of contracting this disease was considerably lower. That's 50.8 years than in the control group. The frequency increased also the longer people had been exposed to the radiation. So the proximity to this radiation is very important. The frequency increased also the longer people had been exposed to the radiation. The study covered a 10-year period, starting the year after the installation of the base station. New Australian research confirms health effect of base station radiation, despite exposure to radiation far below recommended levels. So even though we might have radiation far below recommended levels, because of some other effects, this can also have a deleterious effect. Now, there is an entity called electromagnetic health sensitivity. Recent studies in many countries have indicated that more and more people are suffering from electromagnetic sensitivity, which can be very debilitating. It's thought to result from large changes in the immune system caused by continued exposure to microwave radiations, leading to chronic inflammation and allergic responses. The estimate of EHS vary from 3% to 10%. While Nigeria may not have the same teledensity as in developed world where most of these studies have been done. We must emphasize growth in this regard and look forward to preventive and precautionary regulations. The precautionary principle that I mentioned earlier is a public policy approach to risk management
that the telecom industry, the telecom operators, they are beginning to follow the rules, but they need to do more. We have now situations now where they have to do the EIA. EIA is not done by NESRA. Every EIA document is submitted to our parent ministry. The responsibility of NESRA is to ensure that the provisions stated in EIA certificate is provided for, and that every telecom industry must carry out the 3 environmental audits for every 3 years.
But I don't know who this will be addressed to, but in the course of your deliberations, I just wanted to point out something, because as I was reading, and DG Nezra mentioned it, there's a 10-meter setback. If there was no problem, there won't be a 10-meter setback. It's simple logic. For there to be a 10-meter setback, if there was no issue, nobody will come up with. It's like when you're doing road construction, and they say you have to have a setback. There's a reason for that setback. So if there's no problem, there won't be. So anybody saying that there's no problem citing a mass, and like you rightly said, precautionary is better than, oh, we should have done this, by then we would have lost a lot of people, then it would cost more money. Then also, I would also wanted to ask, the 3-year assessment, because before you go into anything, you must do, even these days, before you dig a borehole, you do environmental impact assessment. Even just the common borehole, hand pump, you do all those things. So, do they do the 3-year, have they been complying with that law, the 3-year impact assessment? Okay, so my chair is taking note of it. Those are part of the things I was taking note of. But please, I'll find out later, maybe by the time the report comes out, we'll know exactly some of these things.
We all recognize the importance of mobile phones and the need for this mass, but then appropriate siting is vital, and electromagnetic radiation output should be kept to an absolute minimum. I'm going to summarize. The worldwide Bills of Rights recognize that everyone has the right to an environment which is not harmful to their health and well-being. In addition, everyone has the right to have the environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations through reasonable legislative and other measures that prevent pollution and ecological degradation, promote conservation, and secure ecological resources while promoting justifiable economic and social development. I'm going to jump straight to a study that was conducted in France that found that intermittent but continuous exposure of human cells to a 50 Hz electromagnetic field induced a slight but significant increase in DNA fragmentation. The French report states that there are no demonstrated short-term effects, but that there are open questions about long-term effects, and that it is easy to reduce exposure via technological improvements. We have here that it is mandatory that the main antenna axis should not be directly located in front of living places at a distance shorter than 100 meters or within 100 meters radius of primary schools or child care facilities. The Nigerian standard for location of antenna or mast is 5 meters, and there does not appear to be any discrimination with respect to primary schools or child care facilities relative to international best practice. The WHO has flagged research into tower effects. This is because there are credible indications from reputable international research that show that exposure at very low levels could be a human and environmental health issue, but there is still a lack of research into the health impact of long-term exposure to electromagnetic radiation from towers, particularly on children who will have a lifetime of exposure at unprecedented levels. Thus, our current generation of children will have a lifetime exposure, and government has the responsibility to ensure emissions are as low as reasonably achievable in line with international best practice. Other countries have much lower emission standards than Nigeria, and yet they operate fully functional mobile telecom networks. So our recommendations include that there is need to conduct independent assessment of electromagnetic radiation output at every tower, particularly those close to buildings, to confirm industry claims and or ascertain that the limits are not being exceeded. 2, that there is need for the establishment of a single, impartial, and empowered review body for Nigeria. 3, that for Nigeria, masts have been located close to primary schools for as long as they have been in existence. There is therefore a need to conduct a retrospective study on the exposed children for possible adverse health conditions that may have resulted from their exposure. Then we align with the NMA in requesting a precautionary principle to be enshrined in the legislation of Nigeria.
Public Accounts Committee, where the Auditor General of the Federation raised a query against the Nigerian Air Force in 2010 for making payments amounting to 1.9 million naira in checks instead of e-payments at the Nigerian Air Force Station, Calabar.
To advise the committee, if we know that issues are very clear and you try to rigmarole, clearly it sends a even where the query is correct, kindly admit so that we can make progress.
Nigeria Air Force.
Please stay tuned.